Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Divorce Support Club for April. Just inside of April, we were just saying it being a third of the way through the year. So today we are here, as always, with Claire Black, who will introduce herself in a moment. I'm Lauren Preedy. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the head of the Divorce and Relationships team at Ian Walker Family Law. And this session that we hold on a monthly basis is designed for us to explore and discuss issues that come up during relationship breakdown, and giving a different type of insight from Claire into how we can help you manage things moving forward in your life. So I'll hand over to Claire for her introduction. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Yes, so as Lauren says, I'm Claire Black. I'm a breakup and divorce coach. I work with clients who are contemplating divorce, going through divorce, or indeed are struggling with a divorce that perhaps happened in the past, to help them rebuild and create new and exciting lives that they're pleased about living. So that's basically what I do. And with Ian Walker Family Law, we've set up the Divorce Support Club almost a year and a half ago, I think it must be now. We meet monthly and we cover all sorts of different topics, hopefully giving you really useful information, guidance, tips, tools, techniques and strategies that you can use to build up a toolkit to get yourself through this period of time and into the next part of your life really successfully and healthily. So today we are, actually before I start, there's a chat box down the bottom and also Q&A. So if you want to ask a question, please feel free to do that in either of those boxes. If you're in the chat, just make sure, if you don't want your name to pop up, that you just email hosts and panelists, and that will just come then to Lauren and I. Okay, perfect. So today we are going to talk about trust. And I've had quite a few questions and so on in since last time about this. So I think the focus is slightly changed from what we talked about last time. So I'm going to talk very much about trust and how you can build on regaining trust or trusting somebody again, and also trusting yourself, which is absolutely fundamental to this.
And that's one of the beauties of this forum and the club that we're running, that we're very open, as we've always said, to listening to what topics you think may be helpful. And sometimes it gives Claire and I ideas of where we might go into the next sessions on the basis of our experiences with helping people.
Yes, exactly. So I'm going to start sharing my screen because, as always, we've got lots of lovely pictures to share with you. There we go. Lauren, give me a thumbs up when that appears, could you? And then I'll know. Perfect. Okay. So before I start, just want to very briefly run through the kind of aims of the DSC. We're here to help you concentrate on you, not your ex, take back control of your life, to help you perhaps become calm, get clarity, focus on the areas that you can control, see options and choices, communicate more effectively, and ultimately create your vibrant, exciting future that you're pleased about. So, trust. So when I was thinking about this talk, I thought, right, I'm going to start right at the beginning here, because trust is massively the foundation of successful relationships. And then I was thinking, okay, so what does trust actually mean? What is it? So I looked it up in the dictionary, and the dictionary says that trust is a firm belief in the reliability, truth, or ability of someone or something. It's a belief that someone is honest, sincere, and won't deliberately do anything to harm you. So that's the kind of dictionary definition of trust. And that really rung true with me. It's about believing in someone's reliability, in the truth of someone's relationship with you, and the ability of them to walk alongside you and not do anything to harm you, but actually support you. And it's the foundation, I think, for all of our relationships. So whether that's relationships with other people, perhaps our friends, our family, our partner, our spouse, those professionals that we might work with. So when you're going through a divorce, perhaps your lawyer, your coach, your therapist, your financial advisor, it's really important to believe in those people that you work with and know that they have your best interests at heart. And fundamentally, I think it's actually the foundation of our relationship with ourselves. When we can trust ourselves, that's when we start to make really good decisions about the other people that we let into our lives. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. So why is trust so important? Well, when you're in a relationship that's founded on trust, whether that's as a friend, a partner, or a professional relationship, trust can deepen the relationship. It helps you to feel at ease, to feel comfortable. It enables you to be open and giving, and also forgiving. It means that you can navigate conflict whilst you're feeling safe and being heard. And conflict in a trusting relationship can actually become an opportunity to grow together, to get to know each other better, to find out more about each other, to change some of the patterns that you might have got into. So instead of being something to fear, it's actually something perhaps to welcome. It increases closeness. It means that you can rely on each other for support, for comfort, for care. And it allows your nervous system to be able to relax, to reset, to rest, because you feel safe and you're able to share your feelings, you're able to share your vulnerabilities, and know that you can explore any issues that arise together. It also means that you can do things separately from the person in the relationship with you, whether that's a friend or a partner or whatever. You can do things separately without any fear of backlash, without any fear of the silent treatment perhaps, or sarcastic remarks. And in fact, it means that you can encourage each other in your interests, and you have a genuine interest in each other's thoughts and feelings. So when you're in a relationship that's founded on trust, and you know that you can trust and that you are trusted in return, there's no walking on eggshells. Your boundaries are respected. You know that you're safe, and it enables both of you to grow. So in contrast, when you're in a relationship with any of these people where there's a lack of trust, that can lead to almost the opposite. So negativity, misunderstanding, conflict that isn't resolved and perhaps goes round and round in circles. Maybe you have the same conflict over and over again. Loneliness in a relationship. And I don't know if any of you listening have ever been in that position, but feeling lonely within a relationship is one of the hardest places to be. And I know I've been there. You know, you're unable to share your true self or share your true feelings, perhaps for fear of the other person's reaction. You might feel insecure, you might suffer from depression or feel very anxious. And it's very difficult when there's a lack of trust to nurture a very close connection. So you might perhaps find that you are worrying about the other person's reaction, you're worrying about raising any issues, however small they might be. Perhaps you worry when an invitation arrives in the post in case the other person doesn't want to go to whatever it is. Or maybe you find yourself defending your friend or your partner to other people, even when you think they're in the wrong. Now, if you've been betrayed in the past or experienced perhaps abuse in relationship, or you have experiences in your past where your trust has been broken, it can feel like a real big challenge to trust anybody again. So we'll look at that as well in a little bit. So what does a relationship built on trust look like? So remember, when I'm talking about this isn't just romantic relationships. It might be your friends and also your professional relationships. So the words and actions match. So if you've ever had somebody say sorry to you and you just know they don't mean it, that's an example of when the words and the actions don't match. Or perhaps you've had somebody say that they love you, but then act in a way that actually shows they don't value you at all. So look out for words and actions match, when you can trust somebody to say what they mean and mean what they say. So somebody you can trust will also keep and follow through on their commitments to you. They'll be consistent. There won't be any big drama. There won't be any, there might be ups and downs, but they'll be, in general, there'll be balance. They'll also listen empathetically. They'll ask questions. They'll be curious. And they'll also acknowledge and take responsibility for mistakes. And so will you within that relationship. And you're also able to be specific about what you might do differently in future. So just a couple of examples. So for example, if you meet a new partner and you perhaps suggest to them that you maybe become exclusive in your relationship, and they say that that isn't what they want right now, that's an honest answer. You can trust that person perhaps, and then it's up to you to decide whether that's okay with you or not. And you then have a choice about what you do, what boundary you put in place, for example. So another example might be you meet somebody new online perhaps, and you say you'd only like to see them a maximum of a couple of days a week, putting a boundary in place. If you can trust them, they'll listen to that, they'll hear it, and they'll respect it. They might be disappointed, and that's absolutely fine, but that's theirs to own and not yours to worry about. And you, of course, might change your mind as the relationship develops, and of course, that's also fine. Things may change. So it's really important perhaps to look back and learn from your past relationships. And while I was writing this, I was thinking about what sorts of questions might you want to ask yourself, perhaps questions that you could think about, questions you can journal about, so that you can start to think about what you can learn from perhaps things that have gone wrong in the past. So could you be 100% yourself in the relationship, or did you have to change yourself to suit them? Did you perhaps give up hobbies you liked or friends that you enjoyed being with? Or did you perhaps find that you had to speak quietly, you couldn't laugh too loudly, and perhaps you had to change the kind of music or TV that you enjoy? Or maybe you were worried about saying things to them, or what kind of topics of conversation you could raise. So have a think about whether you could actually be 100% yourself. Were you able to just be you and be accepted for that? Another question might be, where did compromise become sacrifice? So I see this as kind of like a set of scales. In all relationships, we might be willing to compromise for the other person, but it's really important to start to notice where compromise might slip into being sacrifice, which ultimately then leads to resentment, and can lead to trust and relationship breaking down. So watch out for yourself saying little phrases like, oh, I don't mind, whatever you want. Even on small things like, what kind of takeaway you might like on a Friday night, or whether you want to do a certain activity together, and start practicing expressing your preferences. I remember finding this really hard. I'm quite an I don't mind person, which isn't great. And I've really started to watch that in myself. So rather than saying I don't mind when someone says, what would you like to eat? I'll think and I'll go, do you know what? I'd really like a curry today, or I'd really like a Chinese. Start expressing those small preferences first and then build up to bigger ones. Where did you compromise your well-being for theirs? So did you do things that you didn't want to do, that you actually knew you didn't enjoy, or that actually did compromise your well-being? So for example, maybe you stayed up later than you wanted to because they're a night owl and they get annoyed if you go to bed early. Or perhaps you sometimes gave up your weekly gym session with your friend because they wanted to spend time with you. In other words, putting what they wanted, their well-being, above yours. And that's okay sometimes. It's when it becomes a consistent thing that you're giving up something that actually has an impact on you, that it becomes perhaps an issue. Did you filter your responses to protect their feelings? So, for example, do you worry about making an arrangement with a friend on a Saturday afternoon because you know that they're going to be upset or hurt? Now, that might be another friend. We've all had those friends sometimes who get upset when we do something that doesn't involve them. Do you then very quietly just not do that thing on a Saturday afternoon? Or perhaps you don't give the response you really want to because last time you put a boundary in place, they reacted badly. Maybe when you said to a new person that you'd only like to speak to them a couple of times a week, they were upset and you gave in and spoke more than you wanted to. So watch out for when you're not saying what you really want to for fear of their reaction. That's a massive red flag in any relationship with a friend, with a partner, with anybody. Watch out for things as well, like turning down invitations from friends because your new partner might be moody or grumpy or perhaps not speak to you for a couple of days. Those are really important things to start to notice. Did you find yourself making excuses for their behaviour? So if you find yourself excusing somebody, so let's say, for example, you have an arrangement to go and visit another family, and your friend or your partner pulls out at the last minute saying they just really don't want to go because they're in a bit of a grump. Perhaps you did something this morning that irritated them. Don't make an excuse for them when you go. Go and say, I'm sorry, so-and-so's not come. They're grumpy. And whatever you do, don't cancel your plans. Don't give in and say, okay, well, we won't go then. Carry on, do your thing. So these are all kinds of red flags we're looking out for. So have a think back. What were the red flags in your previous relationships that you need to be looking for? And what would you do differently this time? What are you prepared or not prepared to compromise on? And start writing a list of those things so that you can notice and you can put those in place this time. Because the earlier in a relationship that you can spot these issues and raise them, the better. And the sooner you'll be able to see if this person is trustworthy or not, and is for you or not. And actually, this also enables the other person to grow. So when I was writing this, I was thinking about the difference between being considerate, paying consideration to someone else's needs, and walking on eggshells. So when you are being considerate about someone else's needs, you're focused on what's within your control. For example, how far you're willing to accommodate that person. You're making decisions based on what feels right or kind or comfortable, but importantly, they're still within your boundaries. When you're walking on eggshells, you're then focused on what's outside of your control. For example, how someone else might react or respond. And you make decisions based on that, even if it compromises your boundary. So for example, you arrange to go out with some friends, but your partner is perhaps a bit jealous of the time, or you make an arrangement to go out with a couple of friends and another friend a joint friend you have is upset that you didn't include them, for example. They might be a bit humpy with you or say things like, well, you made me feel left out, in the hope that next time you'll remember that and decide that it's easier not to see your friend or to do the thing at a different time, or even invite your partner or other friend along to avoid the conflict. Now, someone you can trust and who's very emotionally aware might say something different. They might say, do you know what, I'm feeling a little bit anxious or left out or threatened, but I understand that's something I need to work on. So go, and I hope you have a lovely time. There's a massive difference between those things. So remember, you're only responsible for your bit. They're only responsible for their bit. And life becomes a lot easier, I think, when we accept people for how they are, right, rather than trying to make them different. So you can decide if you want to spend time with that person based on who they actually are, rather than on who you'd like them to be. So when you try to keep someone else happy by adapting or changing your behaviour in order to manage their responses, effectively you're taking on their problem, you're making it yours, you're enabling them to continue not to deal with it. And actually they don't grow then, and the trust in your relationship won't grow either. So the important question, am I making this decision based on what's important to me or based on what's important to them? So just a quick summary, trust is something that builds slowly over time. When you're in a new relationship or you make a new friend, notice these little things that they might do, and allow that trust to build slowly. Listen to your gut. If something feels off, something generally is off. So listen to that kind of instinct that you have. Set boundaries right from the start and notice how they respond. Much better to set a boundary in week 2 and then be a bit disappointed when they don't listen to it and bin that relationship off then, than to wait 6 months down the line when you're more emotionally involved. And that will show you whether you can trust them to hear you and whether you can trust them to respect your boundaries or not. Now, the really important thing I think here is to learn to trust yourself and your own judgment. So I'm going to have a quick look at that now. So building trust in yourself is really fundamental. Before you can really trust someone else, you need to be able to trust yourself. So the first step perhaps is to make sure that you build up your confidence in who you are, in how you feel, in your qualities, and building up your self-belief in yourself as worthy and good enough. So here's just a few things that you could do to start that process. So remind yourself of your really good qualities. If you find that really hard, what 3 words might your best friend use to describe you? And you could even ask your friend this, what words would you use to describe me? What qualities do you like in me that make me your friend? Perhaps write down 5 things that you're good at. And then use your wow brain. And we've talked about this before. So your wow brain is where you look back and you think, wow, look what I've already achieved. Look what I've done. Look what I'm proud of. Notice your successes, resources, and what you can do, rather than using your owl brain that says, oh, gosh, I've still got all this left to do and I'm really not very good at that. So use your wow brain rather than your owl brain. Also dress for how you want to feel. We've talked about this a bit before. Stand to reflect how you want to feel. Look at the horizon when you walk. Walk with your shoulders back, your head high. That will help you to feel confident. And then ask yourself really good questions. What can I control here? what would be the most helpful thought I could have right now? What can I do? And what options do I have? All of those are opening up choices. And as you all know, I'm a big fan of having as many choices as possible. So start to build trust in yourself by building up your own self-worth, your self-belief in you. And then building up trust in your own judgment. So this is can be really tricky if your trust has been betrayed in the past. So here's some questions to have a think about, perhaps, and maybe use as a journaling prompt. When was the last time you made a decision based purely on your own judgment? And how much generally do you need other people's approval? When did you last take a risk that showed faith in yourself, regardless of what anybody else thought? And what would it look like to feel and back yourself 100% without looking for others or looking to others for approval? So have a think back over those when after the session. Use those as some journaling prompts to think about using your own judgment and making decisions based on what matters to you rather than what somebody else might have advised you to do. And then when something happens that you would usually kind of pick up the phone to a friend and say, help, I don't know what to do, here's a little strategy to use. So first of all, stop and breathe and then think. So what do you think are your options or choices here? And try and find at least 3. Because if you've only got 1, you're stuck. If you can find 2, you've got a dilemma. And if you can find 3, then you've got real conscious choices that you can start to make a conscious decision to go one way or another. What do you think is the best way forward? And if you still think you feel to take a little bit of advice, take some advice now if you feel you need to, but talk through the options that you've already thought of. Or you could challenge yourself to make a decision without asking anybody. And I would say start small, work up to bigger decisions, and then keep a list of all the decisions that you make using this process and evaluate them. How did that turn out? Did it work well? What could I do better next time? There's no such thing as failure, only feedback. What could I learn from this? And then notice what shifts and how good it feels to be taking charge. And then you've got lots of other things that you can start adding to your wow brain list, for example. So some small things might be, I don't know, here's some examples. Wearing a colour that you love, even though your ex-partner said that they didn't. Move some furniture around. Put up a new picture because you love it. Make some arrangements to see your friends, particularly if that's been difficult in the past. Or start to think, where could I express a preference here? So think every evening, think about where you've made your preferences known today, and think about what your preferences might be for tomorrow. So start to do those things and see how brilliant it feels to start to take charge and to begin to trust yourself. And then when you trust yourself, you'll be in a much stronger place to be able to spot when somebody is overstepping some of your boundaries. And then you can start to talk about that, to make your preferences known and see whether you can trust the people who are around you. So whistle stop tour through trust. I found that absolutely fascinating when I was writing it, and hopefully that has helped with some of the questions that I had in between last session and now. If anybody's got any questions, please pop them in the chat. And I'm just going to see if Lauren has any comments that she wants to make or anything that you want to add, Lauren.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. I was making notes as you were going through the first few slides, and then some of the things I'd written on my notes then linked in with what you were then saying on later slides. And I think from my experience of helping people through all of these difficult circumstances, and of course with your experience of helping people through difficult circumstances, we do see the same kind of patterns of behaviour. If that isn't, I don't want to generalise, but there tends to be things that lots of people go through. So you're not alone in your feelings. And a couple of things I started writing down were about this red flag gut feeling.
Yeah.
And I think even when you are in control of a situation, and when you're going through a breakup, you may not feel in control. Sometimes you do get that feeling and you're not quite sure why. And I see it a lot with clients, and of course we all get it in our personal lives as well, where something's not quite adding up. And sometimes I think that might be because of something that's unknown, or again, it might be, and quite often in the cases that I deal with, it is because there is some boundary issue that it has either been breached or a boundary hasn't been set. And sometimes it's really hard to pinpoint where that is coming from. So I think the questions that you've posed at the end there and the techniques hopefully will help people to kind of work through those scenarios to kind of find out where that uneasy feeling may be coming from.
Yeah, another good thing to look back at, when you're looking at previous relationships, whether that's friendships or romantic relationships or even professional ones, think back and think, well, did I have that gut feeling at any point? Was there a point where I thought something a little bit wrong here? And think back to that. And then now you've got the benefit of hindsight. You can look back and think, okay, was there something in that? And that's how you can start to really trust your own instincts a lot more, because your body will tell you when there's something wrong. You'll get a feeling. For some people it might be a feeling deep down in their belly, or it might be a bit of a feeling of panic, or a heart rate increases, whatever it is. Get to know how your body is telling you that something's not quite right here, and really listen to it, because when someone tells you who they are, you need to listen and respond accordingly.
And also the kind of, I suppose, the flip side of that is to listen to the good feelings of your body as well. If you do feel relief, or you do feel like the expression a weight's off your shoulders, what's made you feel like that? Because you need to listen to that and realize that you may be able to apply that to other areas as well. I see that happening a lot. People say, oh, so this has changed, and actually I feel a real relief there.
Yeah, I was speaking to a client recently who had been in a situation where he wasn't quite sure whether his ex-wife had been seeing someone else or not, for example. He had this kind of feeling about it. And actually, when the truth came out that she had, he said, although it was devastating, it was actually like a weight had fallen off his shoulders. He now knew, and it shifted everything. So I think listening to your body, whether it's about relief, whether it's dread, whether it's I feel happy. I remember going out once with some friends, and we were talking about being able to be yourself, and I thought, you know what, I sometimes feel at home that I can't, that I'm not myself. And that was the beginning of the end of that relationship, because I wasn't feeling that I could actually be myself. But it took feeling uncomfortable with a friend talking about how much she was able to be herself in her relationship for me to recognize that was actually happening to me.
Yeah, and I think the way that I possibly could link this to my experiences of acting as a solicitor for people is that there's a couple of things that I think are probably important. Is that small things can become big things, and especially as being the head of my team, of course I have to deal with things that might happen to other people in my team and the cases they're dealing with, and sometimes that can be either a breakdown in communication, either between solicitor and client, or between another relationship that client is having. And I think my message would be is we are here as your professional advisors, but there has to be that element of trust, and our clients have to be able to talk to us about everything that's happening, because we can't give the best advice if they don't. And sometimes people feel afraid to talk about things because they perhaps have never had the opportunity to before, or sometimes people feel embarrassed to mention things, or sometimes people aren't sure if it's relevant. We are a very open and approachable firm, and if there is something sensitive that you want to talk about, then please do feel free to approach your solicitor. If something was stopping you approaching your immediate solicitor for some reason, then we really focus on making sure the client care of our clients is satisfied. So you can always come and talk to me if I'm not your solicitor, even, because then there may be something that isn't quite linking up for some reason, and our clients are paying us for a service, and we want that service to be as satisfying as possible. So I always want to be able to get to the bottom of that. And I think the reason I also mention that is because sometimes with the way other solicitors deal with matters can cause a drama. And that was one of the things that you'd mentioned, Claire, that to try for there to not be these big dramas. Well, unfortunately, the way some solicitors practice, it's not very collaborative. And actually, bad feelings can be given to a person reading correspondence. And I think it's important to explore where that's coming from, because actually it might be the style of that other solicitor, not the client. So actually you've got a different kind of dynamic being thrown in there that's causing a drama that doesn't need to be there. So, and this is where I think pinpointing where something that's uncomfortable is coming from is important to talk about it, because it might not be the fault of the person you think it is, which can be a really sensitive issue to deal with. And I think that also the reliability is as you said, fundamentally important. And for instance, sometimes I can't reply to correspondence as quickly as I may like, because I may be in court for a few days, or I may be on holiday, or somebody may be sick. But it's really, really important that if you have, from a client's perspective, that if you have got a situation that is arising and the solicitor that is your solicitor is not there, that doesn't mean that you cannot contact somebody else in our team. We work as a team and we talk about our cases. And I think that's something that's really important to me, that we have that ongoing consistency. And again, trust and being open about things is really important. I'm not going to pretend I'm not going to be on annual leave, because it's unrealistic to expect that. And likewise, I set that boundary, because from a professional perspective, I have to have a break sometimes. So although a client's life and case is progressing, there has to be that reality that is happening. And I think that is that is a brilliant thing from a trust perspective, because you always know what is happening. Whereas some solicitors, not in our firm, I would hasten to add, kind of don't tell people what's going on.
Yeah, I used to work with somebody like that, actually, who used to pretend that they weren't on holiday when they were on holiday. But it led to all kinds of strife, especially if he went on holiday to somewhere with a big time difference. Actually being open and honest and upfront with people is a much better way to operate. And I think in what we do, it's really important that our clients feel safe, that they know that they can trust us, that they know that what they, for example, in where I am, that what they tell me is confidential, unless of course there's a legal reason why I have to say something. But to be able to provide that safe space for somebody to feel that they can tell you whatever it is they need to tell you, whether it's something that actually they feel ashamed of, or they feel embarrassed about, or I don't know, they feel a bit silly about, or whatever it is. I don't think there's much that could come up in a session that would, I can't think of anything that would particularly shock me, to the extent that I think it's really important that my clients know they can say whatever they need to say.
And the same with us, because of course we're protected by privilege.
Yes.
And I think the other thing as well is, and at the beginning of our client transactions, you may at the moment, this is going out to our clients, but in the future, bits of it will be used on our website as well, is that we send out a questionnaire, which is, I can't remember the exact name of it at the moment, but it's to do with preferences on the type of personality that you have. So for instance, it's really important to me to know if my clients prefer me to ring, or do they prefer me to send an email? Because some people like to see an email so they can reflect in their own time on it. Other people don't like reading it, they prefer to hear it and talk it aloud straight away. And the questionnaire that we send out has those things in there so that we can see the preferences. And I think that links into one of the things that you were talking about as well, Claire, where you're allowed to have preferences.
Yeah.
if you've been in a relationship that's prevented you from having preferences, you kind of forget how to have one.
Yeah,
so,
no, that's absolutely right. And it becomes almost familiar to be in a position where you can't express your preferences, and it becomes a fearful thing to do. That's why I was suggesting, start small, especially if that has been really, if that's been something that's been an issue, that you've perhaps been in a relationship that's been controlling. To start to express really small preferences is a really powerful thing to do. Sort of, start small and build up.
The other thing that I found really interesting as well, and it does come up a lot, it's that seeking approval from others.
Yeah.
And I actually quite often find that this comes up between my clients, and if they've got a parent that's involved. And sometimes that's because, and it's great that we all have people that can support us, but I sometimes see a shift during a case where I may have a client whose parents have been with them at various meetings because they needed that support at the time. But actually, they then cross a line and the parent is speaking for them. And actually, I sometimes then have to set down really strict boundaries because I might get emails from that person that's not the client. And of course, I have all different types of confidentiality and can only take instructions from the client and things like that. But also, again, it's to realise, and I know we've talked about it before, Claire, that boundaries can change.
Yeah.
And the links back to the preferences that you may have asked a person, a parent, friend to be involved at one stage, but then you need a different type of support, or you don't want them to be involved in that same way. And again, that can be a really awkward and or scary conversation to have with somebody.
Yeah.
Because you kind of feel like they've offered you support and you're kind of pushing them away. But as your confidence grows in the small steps that you were talking about, you don't need to rely on that person in the same way. So I find, the kind of dynamics of relationships and how they change comes up a lot in the work that I do.
Yeah, hugely. I mean, everything we do is about relationships, isn't it? And the breakdown of relationship and trying to do that in the healthiest way possible, and then to move on in the healthiest way possible as well. There's a comment coming to the chat. So I do get gut feelings and I blame it on overthinking, but usually it's right. Yes. Yeah, your gut instinct is very much your subconscious reaction to something, and that's why you get a feeling in your body or a kind of kind of thing going on. Listen to it. Your body really does know, and then your logical brain will come on side and do all that thinking as well. But generally, your gut instinct is not about thinking at all. It's about an instinctive subconscious reaction to something, which is your body telling you to take notice.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that I think is ingrained in society sometimes, that you should look at the facts of something that's happening. But actually, I think there's been a big shift, Claire, over the last few years, particularly over lockdown, where mental health and our emotional intuition has become something that has become a bit more mainstream.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Yeah, I think it has become a lot more mainstream. I think, we perhaps got a little bit too attached to it must all be logical, it must all be rational, but actually our subconscious doesn't always deal in rational. And in fact, there can be conflicting things going on in our subconscious all at the same time, and that's fine. Our brain can cope with that. But yeah, I think that it's a really good thing that intuition is now being talked about. It's a very powerful instinctive tool that your subconscious is always working to try to keep you safe, and so it's really worth listening to when you get those instinctive feelings about something. Definitely.
And actually, aside from all of this and the difficult things, of course, your own well-being is something that one of your slides said, that it's thinking about you. And actually, these things are all working towards your own well-being and having better well-being moving forward. And that could have been something, especially if there has been an abusive relationship that was so far down the list, that can be a hard thing to then focus on. But
and I think as well, there's this thing about looking after yourself as somehow selfish. It's really not. I like the phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you don't look after yourself, you won't have the energy to look after those, perhaps your dependents, your children, or whoever it is that you need to be taken care of around you. So important.
A slightly silly thought has just popped into my head, but I'll share it because I think it kind of, well, I'll share the story and see what you think. So I went for a really posh afternoon tea that cost a lot of money. And there were various cakes. And the person that I was sharing with, I said, well, do you want, please do tell me which ones you like. And they were kind of, well, I don't really mind. So we shared the cakes, and then they didn't eat half of theirs because they didn't really like them. And the ones they didn't like were the ones that I did like.
Oh no, so they ate half of the ones you would have liked to have had. So
they didn't eat them, but I'd already eaten the ones. I'd eaten my share and was full up. Whereas I'd have preferred, if they had told me they preferred the ones they preferred, we would have happily shared them, but they didn't express that.
Did you express your preference as well, Lauren?
So, do you know, actually, probably not enough.
So there's a thing there where you could have done something differently there.
I could have. Yes, I could have.
So you could have said, I really prefer the apple turnover and the fruitcake.
Yeah, and they may have said,
how do you feel?
I don't like those. So yes, so maybe I was just as unforthcoming, is that a word? But again, something really, really small, but actually these things, as you said, if you get used to expressing preferences on those things, they can then help you with bigger decisions. And
absolutely. Another little story actually that's kind of similar to yours. I went out for dinner a couple of weeks ago with some girlfriends. There were 4 of us, and on the menu for pudding was ice cream, and there was something else that had peanut brittle with it, and I love peanut brittle. So when the waiter came to take our order for pudding, I said, could I have some vanilla ice cream, please? And would you be able to put a little bit of peanut brittle on the side of mine, because I really love it? And my friend looked at me and went, oh, that was brave. That was really assertive. And I thought, do you know what? No, I'm just expressing a preference. And the place we're at could say, I'm sorry, we can't do that. But if I don't ask and I don't express my preference, it won't get met. So that's the way I like to look at it.
Yeah. And I think maybe, and also it might be ingrained in us because of relationships when you were younger, or family relationships. And of course, the dynamic between men and women over the years has changed to kind of keep quiet about things.
Yeah.
And of course, well, it's a British characteristic, they say, that we don't complain about things. But if you don't complain, how does the other person, under whatever circumstance, know that there's something that needs changing?
No, exactly. So, it's all these messages we get when we're really young. I'm trying to remember, my mum used to say something about, it being a bit rude to ask for stuff. Actually, it's not rude at all to ask. I know what it was. It was, I want doesn't get.
Okay, yeah.
That phrase.
And I think, though, that by expressing these things and being open and honest, the trust is built, because the person knows where they stand with you then, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. And the I want doesn't get thing's interesting, because actually I think, looking back, what she was objecting to was the word I want. And if you had said, please could I have, that would have been okay. But I took it as, you can't ask for what you like. So it's really interesting seeing how the language is interpreted, and how that leads to beliefs that we then take forward, that it's not okay to ask for what we want.
I suppose that's again, and we could probably have a whole different session on language, because I'm a collaborative solicitor, and as part of that process, you don't refer to any words that are to do with fighting about something or the other person. It's all about teamwork. I suppose in the same way as you were just saying that, I want sounds more aggressive than please may I have, but actually you're trying to achieve the same thing whichever way you say it, but it's how the other person interprets it, which again I could link back to emails and letters.
Yes.
We've talked, maybe this would be a good lead in for us to have a language based on language and interpretation of language, a session on that, Claire.
Yeah, and actually the meaning of what you communicate is in how the other person interprets it, rather than actually in always what you actually mean to say. And how many times do we have arguments around that in our personal relationships?
Or if you're feeling tired and you send a message about something, and you've been a bit perhaps more abrupt than you would have been if you'd sent it in the morning when you were feeling fresh, that type of thing. And of course that can breach trust, I suppose, if a person is but it can be rebuilt again as well, can't it? Because one of the things I talked about earlier was, if you've breached that trust, you then take responsibility for that. So you might email later and say, I'm really sorry, I sent you a message when I was feeling a bit grumpy, I didn't mean blah blah blah, I meant XYZ. Take responsibility for that. So we could talk about this for hours. Yes, we could. I do find it, I'm the same. I find it absolutely fascinating in the dynamics of people I see and help. And I think that my approach has always been from a professional perspective, that I want to be approachable to answer and talk about anything that needs talking about, be it my own clients, or if there is other clients of the firm and there is problems, our client care and customer service, if I can put it like that, is really important as the actual legal part of it as well, and people being comfortable and trusting in not just the legal part of it, but in the reliability of our firm in dealing with it. So I think that it's this is a topic that is close to my heart, Claire.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, I suppose we probably need to draw to a close now. We're getting almost up to 2 o'clock. So,
yes.
Fantastic session. Thank you very much, Lauren.
Yes,
I'm trying to remember the date of our next session.
I was just looking at that just before. I want to say it was a week earlier than usual, because of diary commitments and things. It is Friday the 20th
of May.
Yes.
Brilliant. Friday the 20th of May, and we'll have a discussion about what we're going to talk about, and we'll send that out on the usual emails that will come out to everybody who's on the list.
Yes, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us, and thank you for our listeners that will be not joining us live, but listening to this at a later date. And as always, please do let us know if you have any questions or any topics that you want us to cover. And please do contact me and or Claire about anything that we can help with.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.